In this video, I'm going to talk about some top tips specific to the fearful avoidant attachment style for getting needs met. Hey everyone, I'm Sonia, and on this channel, I seek to help you have better relationships and to heal your attachment style. Okay, so on to fearful avoidants getting their needs met. I've already done a video around getting needs met for dismissive avoidance and for anxious preoccupied. And as I mentioned in those videos, there are common elements for anyone to get their needs met, including securely attached people as well. So I will just mention those briefly, but what I really want to talk about today are the very specific tips that are those nuances to help fearful avoidance with this process. So the key elements are to explore and understand what your needs actually are, to meet them in a variety of ways, most especially by meeting them yourself, and to work on core wound reprogramming, because core wounds can lead to our limiting beliefs and blocks that affect us in all kinds of ways, including not getting our needs met. And then in communicating when we do seek to get our needs met by someone else. So each of the attachment styles I've covered had sort of a theme. For dismissive avoidance, it was the limiting belief around people meeting each other's needs at all. For anxious preoccupieds, it was the other focus and bringing the focus more back to themselves. And so you might think that it's true for fearful avoidance, that, well, aren't we just a combination of both? I say our because I'm a healed fearful avoidant. And so there is some truth to that. Because we do in our relationships often perhaps polarize most of the time one direction or the other as more of an AP, as more of an anxious preoccupied or as more of a dismissive avoidant. And then even within an interaction, we can sometimes flip from one to the other and back again. Some of what I talk about will be related to that we flip back and forth like that, or that we have ways that we polarize and are a little of both. And some of it will be related to specific nuances that fearful avoidants have that are a little different from either of those sides of them as well. The theme I want to focus on for fearful avoidance is the hypervigilance that fearful avoidants often have, where they try to read other people, and they often do it very well in order to get along in their lives and relationships. All right, so tip number one for a fearful avoidant for getting your needs met is to go ahead and consider this aspect of fearful avoidance where they really are either polarizing as either anxious preoccupied or as dismissive avoidant in a relationship, or possibly flipping back and forth between those two. So one thing you could do is just go back and watch those videos so you can see the nuances for both of those styles, since they both apply to fearful avoidance at times as well. The real tip here is to notice how you're polarizing in your life. Like, how often are you maybe more on the anxious side? How often are you more on the dismissive side? Maybe in which relationships, in order to explore what your needs are. So you can sort of see what are you seeking in each particular relationship, and try to consider both ones that might be more common needs for anxious preoccupied, such as wanting reassurance or wanting affection, and then also the same for what on the dismissive side you might be seeking, which is maybe more independence, for example. Considering those two sides to try to get as full of a picture of your needs as you can. Now, there are, of course, nuances that are a little different in needs that fearful avoidants have as well. For example, they tend to want depth of connection or to feel wanted by a partner. So you should be considering those possibilities that are maybe from your anxious or dismissive side, but also be considering how fearful avoidants are. Like I said, wanting depth of connection. And so you really have a lot to draw from. You can draw from the more anxious side of yourself that maybe wants more validation and connection. You can draw from the more dismissive side of yourself that maybe wants more independence and autonomy. And then you can draw from the nuances of yourself in other ways, which might look different for everyone, but commonly for fearful avoidance will include things like depth of connection, novelty, things like that. So tip number two for fearful avoidance in meeting their needs is when you are reprogramming your core wounds, is to especially consider if you have a limiting belief and a wounding around having to earn your worth, so that you're not intrinsically just deserving of love or deserving of affection or deserving of connection, because it's a very common core wound that fearful avoidants have, to feel like they need to earn their worth and they're not just inherently good enough or worthy enough. And the reason this is important is because it's a way in which if a fearful avoidant feels like they have to earn their worth first, then they're not going to believe that they can ask for a need before that happens. So it would lead to possibly delaying asking for a need, suppressing a need for a while, doing some codependent type behaviors where they're trying to give what they want to their partner in the hopes that they will then get it back, right? So it's a very important consideration to try to see where that dynamic is happening. All right, and then the final tip, tip number 3, is a big one because this is really where the hypervigilance comes in. So this is around communication. And what fearful avoidants often believe is that they are fully understanding the other person. And, there's a lot of truth that fearful avoidants understand others very well. They have this hypervigilance. They notice all those cues, the little subtle things that other people might miss, like, for example, body language or tone of voice, like all those little subtle micro clues they will pick up on. Then they'll tend to remember things from one episode of talking to someone to another because they like to sort of try to come up with patterns for people so that and then if the pattern's broken, that might make them nervous, for example. So this is all around that hypervigilance. They really seek to understand someone they're in relationship with deeply. But the problem here is that in any individual communication, there might be some aspect of truth. They notice some subtle shift in someone's voice because they're very good at noticing a shift in pattern or a shift that happens. But does it really mean what the fearful avoidance making it mean in the moment? So this is really important because let's say a fearful avoidant asks for a need. They ask for, could we spend some more quality time together each week to their partner, for example. And then they notice a shift in the partner's voice and it sounds like more negative in some way. And they, they probably are picking up on that actual cue correctly. But then where they're taking it from there with the assumptions they make based on whatever it's based on, whether it's based on, their understanding of their partner, other things they know about the partner, other things they're remembering, it's going to be mixed in, of course, with your own fears as well and limiting beliefs. And so the truth is that you don't necessarily know what's really happening in the partner's mind because maybe the partner has a totally different thought. Maybe they're immediately thinking, oh, that would be really great. And they're just starting to worry about how to make it happen already just because of pure busyness or something like that. So fearful avoidance, if they assume that they know what's going on with someone else, good as they are at reading other people, if they assume that they really know the full picture and the full situation, that can lead to a lot of breakdown in communication. And so it's really important for fearful avoidance to address this and to understand that they don't know the full picture and to keep the communication going and to ask and to not make assumptions. And it goes a long way towards all kinds of conversations, right? But in this case, that will help a lot with actually communicating effectively and having the full conversation about getting a need met. So hopefully that was helpful. I just wanted to bring up a few little nuances for fearful avoidance in particular. I definitely encourage you to watch the other videos if you want even more specifics about this process in general of getting our needs met. And let me know in the comments if there's other fearful avoidant topics that you would like covered.